Here we go.
Welcome to Valley Home Vibes, the podcast that's all about the sizzling hot real estate market here in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm your host, GT Campanile, joined by Kevin Price. Thank you for joining us. Today we're discussing the art of negotiation in real estate. So this is both art and science, right? Negotiating on real estate transactions.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there are some principles that we're going to discuss here, and maybe some steps and maybe some tips. But for the most part, do you feel that there are there is a codified process when negotiating in real estate? Like there is definitely a dance that you have to go through?
Yeah, there definitely is always the potential for a back and forth. It just depends on each property is different, each transaction. They're never the same. They follow the same pattern, the same flow, but overall they're never the exact same. So yeah, you can have the potential for multiple back and forth as you get into the process.
What would it kind of start the negotiation? So what is that point where, okay, we are now in the thick of it? The negotiations have begun. When does that start in real estate?
Well, that starts actually at the very beginning. As soon as a buyer wants to put a offer onto a property, that can start the negotiation process right there. Say the house is listed for 700, and they are comfortable at 675. I mean, right there, they're coming below the list price, and right there, that starts the negotiation process right away. First step.
Does it always, you said sometimes it does turn into a negotiation. What did you mean
Mhm.
by that? Like, do you mean that sometimes the offer is just accepted and there's not much negotiation?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Like, say, for instance, a cash buyer. There's not much negotiation on that. They come in with the offer. Usually, a home seller um, is more willing to go with a cash buyer. There's less hoops to jump through. Sometimes they even waive the inspection. It's just the buyer likes the house. Here's the money they're going to offer, no strings attached, and they just want to get the deal done. So sometimes those are very smooth, and there's not really any back and forth other than they're they put the contract, the offer in, they say yes or no, and then from there it's just signing paperwork back and forth as needed.
and I'm guessing that is predicated on um, the buyer is okay with the price. So for
Yeah.
instance,
Hmm.
if you have
Right.
if you have a cash buyer, they have a little more leverage, but it depends on the balance of power in the market between a seller and a buyer, I
Hmm.
would imagine. And if the sellers have a lot of power, it doesn't matter who you are. You might get a yes a little sooner if you have cash versus if you come in with financing. But for the most part, the
Right.
seller is just going to dictate the terms and be in more control of the transaction. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And a seller may not want to. I've worked with clients before, and they would prefer to sell to a family and not an investor. And if someone
Mm.
comes in with cash, most times people tend to think this is an investor, and they would rather sell their property to a family. So they may just say flat out, "I don't want to accept this offer," and that's perfectly acceptable way to respond.
That's an excellent point. So there's a lot of preparation going into a transaction. So if you're a buyer and you're looking to buy, maybe targeting these zones, these real estate developments that may be under either they're regulated or they're required in some form or fashion to sell to first-time home buyers or primary buyers, primary resident buyers, right? I know there are some new developments in Phoenix where they're aimed at first-time home buyers and they can't sell to investors. So this would obviously help your position as a buyer. So you're not going to lose to an investor. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, that's right. That's helpful as well. But if that's a new development, wouldn't they just be working with the builder themselves?
Yeah, I would imagine the seller is obviously the builder, but they're still in negotiation. And
Yeah.
at least some of the transactions I've worked on from the financing perspective, I've seen them go back and forth a few times. Maybe it's just it's not necessarily the nitty gritty you'd find in, say, a resale home, to where
Hmm.
there's concessions and they find
Yeah.
something wrong with the home and this and that. It's maybe, hey, will you throw in some of these upgrades, or you know,
Right. Change the paint scheme, something simple.
something simple, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it just gives. This is one of our tips, by the way, is always let the other side feel like they're in control. So this is, one of the tips for any negotiator, and no matter what side you're kind of negotiating from, is if you're giving the other side, the counterparty, some feeling of control, that may help your case, right? So if in this case it's the builder and you're coming in as a buyer, let giving them the feeling of control through the process may get you what you want, right? Because no one is people. There's egos involved. There's the
Yeah.
idea of, hey,
Absolutely.
we want a deal for ourselves, and if you give them that
Hmm.
kind of feeling, it's a psychological thing that they have control over their the process and then the end result. They may be likely to concede something right on the deal.
Yeah. Everybody wants to feel like they won. So it is a balancing act. One thing also that I like to suggest is to be, you don't want to give everything away, but you do want to be open. Um, the underhanded tactics that may you may want to try, I discourage those because that's in the end that could backfire. Just be open with what you want, and it's either going to be a yes or no. There's always something else, some other way that you could negotiate further down the process to accomplish what your goal is.
Yeah, Kevin and I are in the Phoenix market, and we're used to being, because Kevin represents a lot of buyers, and I'm always, of course, on the buy side because I'm representing the buyer in terms of financing.
Hmm.
And so we're always at a disadvantage in terms of negotiation, our side, our party, because it's always been a seller's market here in Phoenix, at least for the whole time I've lived here. Primarily, it's been a seller's market. There are some bright spots for buyers at times, but these are markets that are a little further away from the urban core.
Yeah.
There are usually smaller towns or suburban towns that are just growing, and it hasn't the buzz hasn't reached them yet. Versus, say, Scottsdale, right? Or say
Yeah.
Chandler. These are typically sellers markets, and they have a lot of a lot more power during the negotiation. So, kind of alluding to what you were saying earlier, like it's usually we have to accept if they say we agree to your deal, we're not usually going back and asking for something.
Right.
We're saying,
Yeah.
thank God we
Absolutely.
got the deal.
Right. And I mean, there's like I said, I mean, it's there's a lot of steps to the process. So maybe something pops up in the inspection, or maybe there's something that comes along that wasn't foreseen right away. There's always a
Hmm.
chance to negotiate something along the way to where you're able to say you missed out on the higher price, but they're willing to throw in a credit towards maybe paint, or they're willing to come down a little bit on the price maybe as the negotiations come on, or give you concessions towards closing costs. There's always somewhere along the process a chance to go back and forth and have something go your way if it didn't the earlier steps.
Um, what are some other basic principles that you've identified, that all realtors are generally advising their clients to follow?
Yeah, well, of course, we're trying to get the best deal for our client. So if that's the seller, we're trying to negotiate the highest price for them to accomplish how much net they want to walk away with. For the buyers, we're trying to ensure that they get the best price, but also the best quality. Maybe it's a little higher than they want, but that's when the inspection comes in, and we can make sure we get something repaired. I know for one time, windows are expensive if you need them replaced. Maybe you can get something a credit for that, or it's more an exterior thing. You want a new paint job, you can get a credit, or there's another concession that they could provide through the process. Maybe they can throw in a home warranty, a year's worth of home warranty. That's excellent because those cover big expenses that nobody else wants to cover. So that's one thing. Just It just depends on what side you represent and how you can get them the best deal that's possible.
Yeah, and if it is the best deal possible for say both sides, both sides should feel like they're not getting what they want. It's both sides should feel a little angry. They're walking away feeling that maybe they got something out of it, but for the most part, they're probably not going to be totally happy. That means it was probably a fairly balanced negotiation. If one side is feeling like they got the best deal in the world and the other side is walking away like they just got taken advantage of, that
Mhm.
was probably not a well negotiated, in terms of balance, right? On both sides, well negotiated deal. Somebody was conceding something for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Um, Here's another kind of tip for, and these are coming from top negotiators in the market. Um, some realtors say never make the first move. So you kind of wait for the other side to make the first move. And what I think they mean by this is obviously if you're a buyer, you're making the first move by making
Mhm.
an offer. But when it comes down to maybe negotiating or going back and forth, you may have to actually go kind of uh, ask below what the seller is willing to accept or what you think is
Mhm.
actually going to be reasonable. That way you can start to give in a little based on what their feedback is. Some sellers may say, "You're crazy. I'm not even going to entertain this."
Right.
That would be a negotiating tactic on their end because as far as I'm concerned, as far as what I've learned about negotiation, everything is on the table. There's nothing
Yeah.
that is unacceptable, first of all. You can just simply say
Absolutely.
yes or no. But when
Mhm.
people say, that's crazy, I'm not even going to entertain that, what they're really saying is come back with a better offer.
Yeah, just because they said no doesn't mean they're not going to work with you. They just don't like that offer. That offer to them is not up to snuff, and so they're going to tell you no. And then you and your agent can get together and figure out what else uh, you need to present. Maybe it's a higher earnest deposit. Maybe that's what they don't like. Maybe they feel you don't have enough skin in the game, and they want to make sure you're going to go through the process. So instead of a $5,000, give them a $10,000 earnest deposit, but maybe don't increase your offer on the selling price. Maybe they just want to make sure the process is going to go through. You're good to go, and they can plan the next 4 months of their life.
I love this point you made, Kevin, because this would kind of tap into that feeling of control for the other
Mm-hmm.
side. So if you're 100% confident, whether you're coming with financing or you're going to be using cash, that you're going to, as long as the other side says yes, you're going to complete the transaction. Offering up a little more on the earnest money, which basically tells the seller that if this goes south, they have something to gain from it, right?
Yeah.
That they're going to be getting something for their time, this deposit money that's put on the transaction. Increasing it's an excellent way of giving them that feeling of okay, they have some skin in the game here, and
Mm-hmm.
they feel confident enough to put it on the line. Here's another tip. Obviously, know your highest offer. Know your walk away point. Another one is look for non-financial needs or concerns. So the ones we've been discussing are primarily financial, but timing sometimes is key for either side. A
Yeah.
buyer who is selling in California, moving to Arizona, they might have a restraint based on kids getting back to school if they're moving, say, in June or
Mm-hmm.
July. Or the seller, let's say they've had something, what we call like the three Ds, right? Death, divorce, or desperate in some form or fashion, they might have a time constraint, and that would obviously give the other side leverage. But looking for these non-financial needs and concerns might give you the leverage you need in the negotiation.
Yeah, absolutely. I know there was one house nearby that they were pending the buyer's transaction, and they gave them an additional 4 months while they waited for the buyer to sell their property. So maybe you can have an ability to throw that in there um, to show that you're considerate of them as well and what they're going through because they're going through the same process potentially of trying to sell their house to buy your house.
And that's a delicate balancing act. So all parties involved with these situations are typically kind of on edge, in my
Hmm. Yeah, for
experience.
sure.
Um, Laurent, you are involved with negotiating on a daily basis as well. A lot of the transactions you work on actually are um, they're I guess in dollar amounts, they're a little smaller than say a real estate transaction, but you're always negotiating, right? On every
Right.
single account.
Yeah. I mean, everybody's trying to save whatever they can on insurance, you know? Everybody hates paying for it. So, yeah. But,
We
Is
we
hate
it
it
are,
till we
less
need
going
it.
back and forth? Is it
I mean,
on
not really
a,
back and
when you're
forth.
negotiating for insurance rates?
No, because, I don't, we as agents, we don't control the rates. We can really kind of help client understand what they're covered for, what is important for them. A lot of times we can work with some endorsements they don't need, um, or even increase their deductible. So, as long as they have some emergency funds, I always told my clients, hey, if you got the emergency funds in the bank, you know, the likelihood of having a large claim in your home, it's 1 in 22 years for Arizona. It could happen tomorrow, it could happen in the next month, or it could happen in 20 years, right? We just don't know.
Mm.
However, these are, the likelihood of something catastrophic to happen. So again, as long as you've got $5,000 in the bank, that's your emergency funds. If you put $1,000 deductible, you're gonna pay a higher premium. You do a $5,000 deductible, you got the money in hand. If something were to happen, you're gonna save maybe 400 or 500 bucks a year. You do that times 20. That's a good chunk of change, right? Of savings. And again, you just got to make sure that you do have those emergency funds ready to go in case something were to happen.
We definitely know that in 2024, there's going to be a lot of insurance negotiation going on because
Yep.
premiums have gone up and people are shopping for sure.
Oh yeah, they are.
Um, how about this idea? And this is another tip for for everybody out there, is don't fall too much in love with the house and be willing to walk away and give the impression that you have options, even if you don't. So most
Yeah.
people probably are going out looking for homes on the weekend and they've identified maybe several homes they like, but they've kind of rank ordered them, and they've decided that, there's that one house that they really love. And maybe there's a couple of homes that they could move into if they had to, but if they're falling in love with that one home, they're probably going to concede a lot, right?
Hmm.
I, from what the experts are saying across the board in real estate, is that it's best to give the impression that you have other options and you should be willing to walk away from that home that you love if it's going to, put you out too much or you're not going to get the deal that you want. So, does that come into play that you've noticed on in during a real estate transaction? Because this idea to me is rare because once a client has identified a home, a buyer particularly, they want it so badly they are willing to concede a whole lot. This is why I always feel sellers, for the most part,
Hmm.
have a lot more leverage and are in the driver's seat on any negotiation.
Yeah, that's true. One of the roles that the realtor plays though is also to we're we're invested in the client, but we're not emotionally invested. So we can just look at the numbers black and white and just lay it out to them. Hey, this is how much this one's going to cost, and this one may not be your favorite, but it's up there, and this one's going to cost you this much. So if you're able to do that black and white and just be kind of like the older sibling type of thing, just be like, hey, this might be the better option for you, with obviously being considerate, because once emotions get involved, yeah, then reasoning goes out the window. So if you can kind of bring them back down and just put the numbers side by side, that really can help save them money 4 or 5 years down the road.
There's a meme that I see quite often now with Leonardo DiCaprio, and I think it's from Inception, is what it's from, and it shows Leonardo DiCaprio as the buyer and Ken Watanabe as like the realtor. And you got another. I think his name is Levitt something or other. He's in the background, and he's saying we should walk away. And Leonardo DiCaprio is saying, "No, hold on, just a minute." And he's like, "Are you sure you can do this?" And Ken Watanabe is playing the role of the realtor, and is like, "I can't guarantee you anything, but we should try, right?"
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have seen that meme, but I always think of the negotiation. People want that home, and
Hmm.
they want to think that there's a way forward. And I think that's a dangerous place to be during the negotiation, because you should be kind of firm on that walk away. What are you willing to accept, right?
Right, and that's also something though that to avoid that situation altogether is to have that hard conversation before your clients even go look at homes. Have them tell you exactly what they're comfortable paying, have them give you their top dollar, and then you just kind of remind them and let them go as the process goes along. So they kind of already got in their head, this is where we're going to stay, this is what stretches us the most, this is where we're able to go, and this is where we have to stop. So if you can get that knocked out before you guys really get into it, that's one thing that really really helps, to bring some of that power back to the buyer, so that they're not making a financial decision that's going to be worse for them than if they go with something that may be an 8 out of 10 instead of that 10 out of 10 house that they're wanting.
All excellent points. I think that um, negotiation in real estate is a science, but there's probably a lot more art to it, because every situation is unique and different. If you can follow some of these tips and principles, you're probably going to be better off. Um, but any last comments, Dad, for people who are going through the process here in 2024, Kevin or Laurent?
Yeah, no, I don't have anything else. It's definitely going to be an interesting year. It's already been interesting, and I just
Yeah.
It
kind of want
has.
to see how it's going to finish, because we're only in middle of May, so we got the election coming up in November. There's going to be some questionable decisions with the rates going on between now and then. It's
Yes,
it might be end up being a shootout come come the end of the year of what goes on.
Yeah.
agreed.
Yeah. One more point or two. I found for anybody that is going to be looking to buy a home in the Flagstaff, Prescott area, definitely shop early for home insurance because there's not much carriers out there now. It is
Okay.
getting a little tougher, so definitely consider it to really shop for insurance a little sooner than usual.
Yeah, that's good to know. I didn't even think about
Yeah.
that.
Yep. All those
All
fire
right.
cautious areas are getting tighter and tighter now.
It's good to know.
That's a wrap, folks. Reach out to us if you want to know more about real estate negotiations, or have questions about buying or selling a home, or getting insurance. Please contact us using the info below. Lastly, please don't forget to click the like button and subscribe. Until next time.
Have a good one.
Have a good one. All right, guys.